This story is very meaningful. Everyone should hear it. Listen to Brian tell the story. I'm Vanessa, a 25-year-old woman currently studying in London, carrying with me a sense of strength and determination. Since I was young, I've always been independent, working my way through life, earning money through scholarships and part-time jobs to fulfill my dream of attending college. But everything changed when my own father betrayed me in the worst possible way, forcing me to face the greatest challenge of my life. Now, it's not just about protecting my future, but I also have to deal with a fractured family, making decisions that are both painful and full of inner turmoil. I could feel the weight of the phone in my hand, the heavy silence between us. My father's voice, as calm as ever, seeped through the speaker, and for a moment, I almost believed he was just calling to check in on me like any father would. But no, the words that followed shattered that illusion. "You didn't need it anyway," he said casually, as if he hadn't just admitted to stealing the entire college fund I had painstakingly built over the years. "Besides, what's done is done. No point getting upset about it now." I tried to steady my breath, to keep my emotions from spilling over, but the words cut deeper than any betrayal I had ever known. "My name is Vanessa. I'm 25, living in London, thousands of miles away from home, and I've spent the last decade working my ass off to get here. Every penny I had earned was supposed to pay for my senior year of college, the last stretch of my academic journey. Money from scholarships, part-time jobs, and careful saving, all gone in the blink of an eye, with my father's careless dismissal of the future I had fought so hard for. "Vanessa, you don't understand." My father's voice began to tremble, different from the calm tone he usually used. "I don't know what to do anymore. My company went bankrupt. All I have are debts, and no one is there to help. You have to help me. You're the only one I can rely on. I know you have enough money to help me. Can you give me the 42,000?" A strange feeling rose inside me. I couldn't believe my father was begging like this, especially when he had always seen me as a tool to solve his financial problems before. "Dad, I can't give you all that money," I said, my voice firm, but not without pain. "I need some of it to pay for my tuition. I can give you 2/3 of it, but I have to keep the rest." Silence hung in the air for a moment. I could hear my father's breath through the phone. Finally, he responded, his voice hoarse. "All right, I accept. 2/3 is enough to save this situation. You're a great daughter, always thinking things through, just like your old dad." But what I didn't know was that he didn't keep his word. Even though we had reached an agreement, he quietly withdrew the entire amount just a few days later, leaving me with a sense of betrayal and loss that couldn't be undone. How much is left?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. My hands shook uncontrollably as I held the phone tighter. "Left? None of it's left, honey. I had some debts to clear up, but don't worry, you're smart. You'll figure something out." Figure something out. Like I had a choice, like he hadn't just stolen the fruits of 4 years of my hard work. 4 years of late nights, early mornings, studying while juggling jobs. All of it meant nothing to him. I sat down at my desk, my small apartment overlooking the busy London street I had fallen in love with during my semester abroad. Just 3 months left until I had to return home. 3 months to figure out how to salvage what was left of my senior year after my own father had pulled the rug out from under me. The buzz of my phone snapped me out of my thoughts. It was a text from him. "Don't mention this to your mom or grandmother. No need to worry them." Of course he didn't want them to know. Just like he hadn't wanted them to know about his gambling debts, his failed business ventures, his endless borrowing of money that he never repaid. He had made his choices, and now he expected me to clean up the mess. But I wasn't going to let him get away with it. Not this time. I opened my laptop, the glow of the screen lighting up my face in the dimly lit room. My hands were still shaking, but this time it was different. I wasn't shaking from anger. I was shaking from the cold, calculating calm that was taking over. I began making a list. Documentation. Bank statements showing the account's history. Proof of my deposits. Records of the scholarships I had earned. Then I started researching. Legal resources, financial aid options, potential part-time jobs that might help me bridge the gap. My father had always underestimated me, always treated me like his backup plan. "Good thing you're pretty," he'd say when I brought home straight A's, as if my academic achievements were somehow secondary to my looks. You can always marry rich if college doesn't work out. But I hadn't worked this hard, come this far, to let him derail my future. He thought my calm acceptance of his theft was a sign of weakness. He had no idea that practical was exactly what he should fear. Over the next week, I pieced together the extent of his betrayal. The account had held just over $42,000, money I had earned through scholarships, summer jobs, and careful budgeting. My father had withdrawn it all in a series of transfers just small enough to avoid immediate detection. Each withdrawal was a calculated move to drain everything, and I had been too far away, too caught up in my own life to notice. My roommate Emma found me one evening surrounded by bank statements, her face a mask of disbelief as she read over my shoulder. "Your father did what?" she gasped. "He took everything," I muttered, too exhausted to cry. "I don't even know where to begin." "Can't you report him for theft?" "The account still had his name on it," I explained, my voice tight with frustration. "Legally, he had every right to access it. I just never thought he would actually do this. I should have known better." I glanced at the pile of text messages that had come in from him over the past few days, each one more condescending than the last. "Don't stress about the money," one message read. "You worry too much. Maybe this is a sign you should take a break from school. I know some guys who could get you a modeling job. Better money than that degree." The messages kept coming, one after the other, each revealing more about how little he valued my education, my independence, my future. To him, I was just another resource to exploit, another safety net for his poor choices. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I made calls to my university's financial aid office, to legal aid services, to my grandmother who had always supported my academic dreams. I didn't tell them everything yet. I was just gathering information, figuring out what my options were. But then my father called again. "Hey, Princess, quick question. You wouldn't happen to have any other savings accounts, would you? Just wondering, since you're always so good with money." The casual entitlement in his voice made my blood boil, but I kept my tone light. "Why do you ask?" "Oh, no reason," he said. "Just thinking about your future. You know how dads are. Thinking about my future like you did when you drained my college fund? Like you did when you tried to discourage me from studying abroad, claiming I was running away from family obligations?" I bit back, but before he could respond, I cut him off. "Sorry, Dad. In class now. Talk later." I hung up and opened my laptop again. I added one more thing to my list. Close any remaining accounts he might know about. Transfer everything to new accounts at a different bank. That evening, I received an email from my grandmother. "Called your father today. He seemed nervous when I asked about your college fund. Is everything okay?" I smiled, imagining his discomfort. He'd always been afraid of her, the only person who'd ever successfully held him accountable. I replied quickly, "Can we talk? There's something you should know." Her response was swift and fierce. After hearing the full story, she called an emergency family meeting, without my father present. "That man," she fumed over our video call, my mother and aunt sitting beside her, "has gone too far this time. Stealing from his own daughter?" I watched their faces as I shared the bank statements, the text messages, the casual way he dismissed my future. My mother's hands trembled as she read his messages. "I had no idea," she whispered. "He told me you decided to take a break from school, that you were thinking about moving back home." Of course he had. My father was a master at spinning narratives that suited his needs. How many times had he twisted my achievements to make them about him? How often had he taken credit for my success while secretly undermining it? "I've been documenting everything," I told him, my voice firm. "Every withdrawal, every message, every call. I'm not letting him get away with this." My aunt, a lawyer, leaned forward. "The account issue is tricky since he was a co-signer, but there might be other angles we can pursue. Has he made any promises in writing about repaying the money?" I pulled up more screenshots, emails where he'd acknowledged the money was for my education, texts where he'd casually mentioned paying me back someday. "Perfect," my aunt said. "Not legally binding, but excellent leverage for what comes next." "What comes next?" my mother asked, her voice full of concern. "We make Gregory realize exactly what he's done and whom he's done it to." Everything was ready. My family had devised a detailed plan to confront my father. My grandmother would be the one to face him first, making him understand that the entire family knew what he had done. Aunt Sarah would prepare a letter demanding the repayment of the money he had stolen, and my mother would finally file for divorce, severing all financial ties with him. That day, I sat in the living room, my heart heavy. Every plan had been made, but I couldn't deny that part of me didn't want to take it too far. After all, he was still my father, but I also knew that I couldn't let him continue to torment my family. "You can't just let this go on like this," my grandmother said, her gaze sharp but filled with determination. "We'll show him that what he's done isn't just the action of a failed man, but that of a traitor." I nodded, though I felt a lump in my throat. Sometimes when you face the truth about your loved ones, you have no choice but to do what is right, no matter how painful it may be. That day, my father called. I looked at the phone screen, part of me wanting to pick it up and hear his voice, but another part of me wanting to ignore it, to avoid the lies he would tell. "Don't answer," my grandmother advised. "He just wants to pull you into his game." I let the phone go to voicemail, my heart swelling with fear about what was about to happen. Then I received a message from him. "Don't tell your mom or grandma, do you understand? This is just a family matter. You don't want to make things more tense, do you?" But this time I wasn't backing down. I was no longer the weak girl I used to be. I had learned to stand up, and no one had the right to take away my future. After waiting for a while, the news finally came. Aunt Sarah had sent the letter demanding my father repay the money. The letter was sent by mail, accompanied by all the documents proving that he had stolen the money from my account. My grandmother, Aunt Sarah, and my mother had no other choice but to force him to face his actions. My mother told me over the phone that evening, her voice trembling but filled with resolve, "We can't let him continue deceiving us like this. I've made up my mind. I'm filing for divorce." I didn't know what to say. Part of me felt relieved that my mother had finally decided to stand up for herself, but another part of me felt a sharp pang thinking about how my family was about to fall apart because of my father's actions. "I don't know what to do anymore," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Will Mom be okay?" "She'll be fine," she replied, "and so will you." It felt as though a new door was opening, allowing me to step into a life no longer dictated by the bad things. Yet at the same time, I felt like a part of me was still uncertain about the vast changes ahead. The next day, as part of the plan, my grandmother called my father and demanded that he come to see her. He knew he could no longer hide. My grandmother called to inform me and my mother that he would be coming. My father arrived at my grandmother's house in the afternoon. No one opened the door for him, but my grandmother wouldn't let him in. Standing outside the door, my father began to grumble, but my grandmother interrupted. "Don't stand there playing games, Gregory. You've stolen everything from your daughter. Don't think you can get away with this." A few minutes later, my father left, pale-faced and speechless. He could only send me messages full of accusations, as though I was the one who had torn the family apart. "Daughter, you can't do this to me. You're the only one I can rely on. Is the whole family turning against me now?" I didn't respond, nor did I care to. My heart was full of understanding and pain, realizing that people like him would never change. Finally, despite the endless calls from my father and his messages full of defeat, I kept moving forward. My efforts not only helped me get back the money I had lost, but also opened up new opportunities. I found a part-time job to continue my studies and stabilize my life in London. My mother had finally signed the divorce papers, and with the help of my grandmother and Aunt Sarah, my father had no choice but to accept the conditions set by the family. He would have to repay the full amount, with interest. A part of me felt relief seeing him finally take responsibility, but another part still felt regret over everything that had been lost. The day I received my diploma, I didn't even look at him. It was over. I had risen stronger and learned how to build my life without depending on anyone, especially not my father. My mother and grandmother were the only ones I needed to thank. In the end, I stood on the stage accepting my diploma, looking toward my grandmother and mother. They were my greatest support in life, the ones who never gave up on me. My father, though he had lost everything, I felt nothing but relief. For months after the confrontation, things were different. My father, once the man who seemed to think he could get away with anything, now found himself in a reality he hadn't expected. The family had turned its back on him, and even his closest friends had started distancing themselves. My grandmother, Aunt Sarah, and my mother had made sure that there would be no second chances, at least not until he truly changed. And deep down, I knew that was the only way forward. The man who had been a constant disappointment was now forced to face the consequences of his actions. I heard through the family grapevine that my father had started working again, really working. No more get-rich-quick schemes. No more relying on others to bail him out. He'd found a steady job at a local car dealership, scraping by day, and putting every penny he could toward paying off the debts he had accumulated over the years. The days of lavish spending were over. The man who once flaunted his wealth now barely had enough to make ends meet. But in a strange way, that was the best thing that could have happened to him. He had to start from nothing, just like he had made me feel like nothing all those years. My heart wavered every time I thought about him. I wasn't sure if it was pity or just the exhaustion from carrying the weight of all that resentment for so long. I wondered if this change was real or just another one of his attempts to get back into my life. But the truth was, I wasn't sure I cared anymore. I was proud of how far I had come, and I had learned the hard way to trust myself and no one else when it came to my future. A few months later, I was sitting at my desk in my small flat in London, working on an upcoming presentation for my job. It had been a busy week, but I was doing well, feeling more in control of my life than I ever had. Then out of nowhere, my phone buzzed. It was a message from my father. "Vanessa, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I've been working hard these past few months. I'm trying to pay off everything I owe, including the money I took from you. I've been doing it the right way now. Please, just give me a chance to prove I'm different. I know I've failed you, but I'll do whatever it takes to earn your forgiveness. Please, let me see you." My heart skipped a beat. The words were humble, honest, and perhaps for the first time, genuine. He wasn't asking for anything more than a chance. My father, the man who had once taken everything from me, was now trying to rebuild his life, asking for a chance to make amends. I stared at the message, unsure how to react. It had been years since I had heard those words, "I'm sorry," and even longer since I had believed them. But I couldn't ignore the shift I had seen in him. Maybe it was too late, maybe it wasn't, but this was a man trying to redeem himself. He wasn't the same person who had stolen my future. After a long pause, I typed a response. "I'll meet you, but this doesn't mean everything is forgiven yet. You have to prove to me that this change is real." I wasn't sure if I was being fair or not, but I knew I had to protect myself, even from the possibility of being hurt again. Still, I felt a flicker of hope in me. Maybe he could change. Maybe this was the start of a new chapter for both of us. We met in a small cafe on the edge of town. I had never seen him look so small. The once confident, domineering man was now a shell of the person I remembered. His clothes were worn and his face was tired, marked by the struggles of the past few months. He had changed, that much was clear, but I didn't know if it was enough to erase all the years of hurt. He stood up as I approached, his eyes filled with regret. I took a seat across from him, waiting for him to speak first. "Vanessa," his voice cracked as he looked at me. "I know I don't deserve any forgiveness, but I'm asking you to hear me out. I've spent every day since I took that money thinking about what I did. I'm not proud of myself, and I know I can't undo the damage I caused. But I'm trying. I'm working hard to fix my life and pay back everything I took, including what I owe you." His hands trembled as he spoke, and I could see the guilt written all over his face. The man who had once been so full of excuses was now completely vulnerable. "I've been working a job I never imagined I'd have to take, just so I can pay off my debts. And I'm not asking for a handout, Vanessa. I know I don't deserve anything from you. But I'm asking for your forgiveness. Even if it's just a little, I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose my family." I sat there taking it all in. Every word he spoke felt like a step toward redemption, but part of me was still unsure. My father had broken so many promises over the years, and it was hard to know if this was just another one of those moments where he would let me down. But the change in his demeanor, the way he was speaking with no arrogance, no manipulation, made me realize something. He was truly trying. "I don't know if I can forgive you right now," I said, my voice steady but with a touch of emotion. "But I'll give you this. I see that you're trying, and that means more to me than anything you could ever say." He nodded, his eyes brimming with tears. "That's all I need, Vanessa. I know it'll take time, but I'll keep proving to you that I can be the father you deserved." It wasn't an easy decision, and it didn't come with any guarantees. But as I left the cafe that day, a part of me felt lighter. My father had taken the first step toward changing, and I was willing to give him the space to prove himself. For the first time in a long while, I allowed myself to believe that maybe, just maybe, people could change. It wouldn't happen overnight, and I wasn't going to forget everything that had happened. But I wasn't going to carry the weight of bitterness with me forever either. Sometimes forgiveness wasn't about forgetting, it was about giving someone the chance to show they could be better. My journey had taught me the power of resilience, and now it was teaching me the power of second chances. And that was something I could hold on to. I stood at the crossroads, both literally and metaphorically. My father, the man who had hurt me more than anyone else, was standing in front of me, asking for forgiveness. It felt surreal. Everything in my life had led me to this point. The pain, the betrayal, the years of resentment, and now this. He was asking for a second chance. But could I really give it to him? As I stared at him, 1,000 thoughts raced through my mind. He was trying. He was showing real remorse. But could I trust him again? Could I forgive him for everything he had done? Now it's your turn. What do you think Vanessa should do next? 1. Give him a chance to prove himself. Vanessa decides to give her father a second chance, even if it's hard. She agrees to work with him to rebuild their relationship, but sets clear boundaries to protect herself. 2. Tell him it's too late. Vanessa tells her father that it's too late for forgiveness. She can't forget the years of hurt, and no matter how hard he works to change, it won't erase what he's done. It's a shame. Ask him for a detailed plan. Vanessa tells her father that before she considers forgiving him, she needs to see a clear, concrete plan. How is he going to prove that this isn't just another cycle of broken promises? Please leave your choice in the comments below. Thank you to the audience for listening to this story.